saying, "You could do this, man. You got this. Go." Like, you've been
Yep.
through so much worse in your life. Like, you can do this. Go.
Hi, I'm Nick Cosentino, and I'm a Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. In this interview, I got to sit down with William Ray and hear his story about how he's breaking into tech. And he's got an awesome story because he's got a background that is not typical and he's been through some hard things. I think it's really awesome that he has this great message to share with all of us, and you can hear about how he's trying to transform his life and do better things. And of course, the job market for tech is really difficult right now, but it's really cool to hear that Will is going out and creating work for himself. So he's being very proactive, and I just really love a lot of the things that he's doing. If you like this kind of content, leave a comment below to let me know. Thanks, sit back, and enjoy. I'll see you next time. You do have a very interesting story about how you got to where you are currently. I don't know where you'd like to start with that, but I think hearing about that would be tremendous. I think there's a lot of value for people to hear about that because like I mentioned to you before we flipped the recording switch, it was like I think a lot of people expect, if I want to be a software developer, I must go down this certain path. Things must look a certain way. But the reality is it doesn't look that way for a ton of people. So I think you have a great example of that to share.
Yeah. So it started with me being in healthcare. So, my past is a lot of crime and drugs were in my own personal past. And after I cleaned up my life, probably back in 2017, I got into healthcare and I really dug deep. Like, I have no college degree, I have no certificates, but I moved up to directorial positions in substance abuse facilities, like managing, like, man, I mean, a lot of people, over 100
Wow.
individuals, supervisors and everything. Like,
Awesome.
like they would fly me out of state. Like, it was big, but I did a lot really quick. And that was from like my charisma, my willing to work, my quick learning, my being like relatable and empathy, just being myself, I guess, helped me climb that rank. And I'll be honest, it's very taxing on the soul, working in that field. And then also there's a lot of red tape. So like me, I want to just help everybody. I don't want to think about all the red tape or the politics involved. Like, I just want to help people. I want to show love, like was given to me when I turned my life around, because that's how it happened. And I started looking in different ways to like change my career. And I always liked technology. And I don't even remember how it happened. I got like on the VA site, and then I somewhere else, but somehow I ended up typing my first hello world in Python. And
Okay.
and my mind was blown. I was like, what? I just did that because I felt like I couldn't, man. I was never good at math. Wouldn't consider myself like not smart, but like I don't feel like I was intelligent enough for that stuff.
Sure.
And I don't know. I don't know, man. It was like this weird events. Like, I did an IT support certificate through Google that turned into me typing "Hello World" in Python. That turned into me making a little game where you could put a robot through a maze. And
Cool.
I
Yep.
was just like, that was it. I was sold on it.
You're
And
like,
I
holy
dug
crap,
deep, man.
I'm doing it.
Seriously, man. And like watching the things happen on the screen by me typing characters into the computer was just like, I still, it gets me so excited. I'm like, this is just wild. And I did that for a while with self study and was still working. And then I quit my job and I was like, I'm going to do this. We're going to make it happen. And it didn't happen. Right. AI started getting real big and a lot of things happened, and I gave up for a while. So we were talking about that earlier. Like, I'd quit. I got a really good job and back in substance abuse, and I just kind of like gave it up. I was like, there's no point. This is never going to
Mm.
happen. I just give up. And then recently, a company that I'd signed up for last year came back and reached out to me randomly and kind of reignited that flame for me. And then I went to a boot camp, which I just completed in April. And
Congratulations.
now, thank you. I did a Java boot camp with Tech Elevator, and now I'm on the job hunt, man. I've been looking for a job, but I have a family to take care of, which led me into the contracting and kind of figure out ways to generate leads to build
Right.
websites for people so I could get experience in that, but also like supplement my income during my job hunt. And then here we are,
That's awesome. No, I mean, there's a lot of power in that story, right? I think it's, first of all, thank you for sharing. I mean, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable being able to talk about things in their past and stuff. So being able to have something like that in your life where you've been able to find a way to kind of turn it around for yourself, That's extremely powerful. So thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Um, I love to hear that, part of that journey for you was aside from the software part, right? Like basically being able to say, I want to give back. Like you had in part of your journey, it required, the help of others to get you past that. And now you're at this point where you're like, I want to do that for the others. So the red tape thing, I could totally understand. And like anything in medical, it's just going to be a complete nightmare for red tape. So I could imagine that would feel frustrating where you're like, man, I just want to do what people did for me and keep doing it. Like stop with the red tape. So could imagine the frustration there for sure. But before we move on, this is just a reminder that I do have courses available on DomeTrain if you want to level up in your C# programming. If you head over to DomeTrain, you can see that I have a course bundle that has my getting started and deep dive courses on C#. Between the two of these, that's 11 hours of programming in the C# language, taking you from absolutely no programming experience to being able to build basic applications. You'll learn everything about variables, loops, a bit of async programming, and object-oriented programming as well. Make sure to check it out.
Very, very much so. And I do a lot of like my family really. We do a lot of like volunteer work outside of here and we help people get clean and kind of change their lives and it brings a lot of joy to me, but when you put money involved with it, it just makes it just makes it really difficult, which led me into software development because my hope is that I can get involved in a project that is changing people's lives and is still helping, but it's not life or death so much. Like when you're dealing with people that are in substance abuse, in and out of prison, crime, all these different things, it's life or death. Like
Right.
a lot of times, some people just don't come back, and that's the reality of it. And it's I don't know, when you put money involved, it just doesn't feel right. It gives me that like icky feeling, like it just don't seem right.
Yeah, there's too much opportunity. Like anything that you associate money with, it's like people want money, right? Like it's a motivator for basically everyone. So it can become at odds with what you're trying to do fundamentally, which is help people, right? So when you start putting those two things together, it's like, you know, uh, a weird balance. So I can totally understand that icky feeling. I have a question for you though, and it's about, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, if you've thought about it, but when you're going, you kind of mentioned that you had something that felt like a pretty good, stable position for being able to help, give back. And you mentioned moving up pretty quickly. I understand if you're like, okay, I got the flame reignited for coding, but what's the thing that like kind of got you to say, screw it, I'm doing this for real? Like what really made you kind of take that leap instead of just being like, this is comfy? Because I think that's a huge challenge for a lot of people.
So it's a little bit of different things, and if I'm being completely honest, some of it is money related because without me going to get a master's degree in social work or something like that, like I was making over six figures and all I have is a GED. I've been to prison multiple times. I was a drug addict for most of my life. And I was running a multi-million dollar substance abuse facility with a GED. You know what I mean? And I say all that because I felt like I had capped out without getting more education. So
Right.
there was a money piece in play, but also like I said, like I felt icky trying to help people all the time. But then something had happened and I was helping a client. And I remember like I went out of my way and wasted, well, I don't want to say wasted. I use that word. I shouldn't have said that.
Sure.
But I used up a lot of company time that they felt like I wasted on an individual that probably shouldn't have had that, they thought. And I remember sitting there and somebody kind of reprimanding me that way. They didn't like get on to me, but what they were saying in between the lines was like, don't do that. And I remember sitting there thinking like, I may have saved that guy's life. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like he was ready to go. And you come to me to tell me that, I shouldn't be wasting my office time with that. And it just, it affected me like a lot. Like I felt very miserable at work after that. And it was like that pain motivates us to do change, right? When you feel enough, when the pain is great enough, you'll do something different. And that was kind of one of those movements for me was like already I was like, how can I make more money? I got a late start in life. I need to invest quicker. I need to make more money and do these things. But also like I don't like how this feels anymore, right? It
Right.
doesn't feel like it's helping people anymore. I feel like I'm lining people's pockets and my heart wasn't in it anymore. And it was so weird because it was like a switch was flipped, and I was like, I'm just going to go all in, and I'm going to figure this out one way or another.
Interesting. Yeah, so that's a really good point to call out, right? So there's a obviously the interest that you wanted to get into software development, so you have that opportunity to be like, "Okay, this is calling me," but at the same time you have something like where you're like, My alignment with this is not really working." And it's you mentioned already that you are doing volunteer work with your family still, so it's not like you said, "Hey, screw this, it's not important to me at all." Like you're finding ways where you can still volunteer. And is that accurate to say?
No, yeah, very much so, because it feels a part of my soul that nothing else does. Right? There's just something you get from it that money doesn't feel, other things don't feel. It's just like it's part of who I am, and I'd like to say it's a part of who my kids are, a part of who the whole family is. Is that is us as a family. Like, people know when we show up, we're going to help. We're going to roll our sleeves up. We're going to do whatever we can. We'll stay late after the party to help clean up, stuff like that. And it's really important. I instill it into my kids just because I feel like that's the only reason I'm here, because my life, I feel like I shouldn't be here, man. I went through some things in my life that I'm surprised that I made it out of. And like, it means a lot for me to give that back to other people.
Yeah, that is
A,
truly
a humble
incredible.
brag.
No, well, I think it's I think it's good, right? It's like not having gone through it, it's not really fair for me to say, but I imagine it kind of feels like this second chance to do more with your life, and being able to instill these things with your children and have this kind of embedded in your family. I feel like that is such a cool thing to be able to say, "Hey, look, like we're going to do better," and your kids are kind of also part of that. And I think that's awesome. So that's really cool to hear.
Thank you.
So, boot camp. I want to hear about boot camp. This is a thing. I know you mentioned, like, okay, so the medical side of things, you were saying, okay, kind of feeling capped out. And I think this is a pretty typical thing that can happen in a lot of industries where you might be like, based on whether it's like formal education in terms of master's, PhD, or some type of training certification, you kind of, in some industries or some areas, kind of reach a point where you're like, I kind of feel stuck, but so and so has X. They seem to be able to get further. Whether or not you agree with it, it seems to be a thing that happens. Um, and so in this case, when software development, I imagine a similar thing came up where you're like, I don't know if I want to try to go for university or college for 4 or 5 years or something, but I'm assuming the boot camp opportunity just seemed like a much better fit. Is that fair to say? And what kind of drove you in that
Yeah,
direction?
very much so. So I had self-studied for a while, and like I said, I had quit. I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, and I think everybody goes through that, where you just feel like you're not learning, you're not networking enough, whatever it may be. But boot camps they have a real bad name at the moment. So I did a lot of research on that. But like you said, I don't really want to go spend the next 4 hours, or 4 hours, 4 years learning for a college education, because what's the next 4 years look like? Who knows? Is it still going to be worth it when I'm done? I have a family to support. Like, I got a late start in life. I want to make this happen a little bit faster. I'm already, I've built some websites at this point. I've networked with a few people. I had a YouTube channel, and I had already done a lot of things. So I thought maybe the boot camp would be like the little credentialing on my resume, that maybe
Right.
somebody like, okay, he's been doing this for a little bit. He's taking it serious. He dropped, 25,000 on a boot camp, including fees for living and stuff. But maybe that would be the last push over the hill, is kind of what I was hoping for with that. So I chose to go to a boot camp. It was full time for 4 months, and I'm torn at the moment, right?
Okay.
So it was good. It was good. I learned a lot. I met a lot of really cool people, and I like to do a two-prong approach when I apply, and it opened up the doors to a lot of other people. And I think that
Okay.
was kind of what I really wanted anyways. But since I don't have a full-time job at the moment, maybe I'm still bitter, and it's not their
Sure.
fault, it's my own fault, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So how did you okay, I have definitely heard regarding boot camps, like I've heard of some people especially recently talking about having success at them, and I think that's awesome because I don't I don't want software engineering and software development to be like a gate kept thing. I think that like one of the really awesome things and kind of like part of your story is like, hey, like you kind of stumbled upon programming and you're like, holy crap, this is cool, and you're doing it. And I think that for so many people, they're like, oh no, like I'm just not smart enough, I don't know math, it's just I'm not that person. And I think that there's already too much of that, and we don't need any other things to gatekeep people from going further. I think there's value in college and university. I think there's value in formal education, but I don't think that it needs to be the only thing. So I'm glad to see some things are changing. But I have seen a lot of boot camps. There's so many of them. And I think I've talked about this before, and I want to kind of hear your perspective on this because you had to go through finding a boot camp. But it feels like to me, with so many boot camps that are competing with each other, you kind of have this effect of like, how do we make ourselves look better than the other boot camps? So we will do it better for you. We will do it faster for you. We will have a better guarantee. And I think that those three things just don't really work well together because it ends up being like in 1 week you'll be the biggest expert ever in the world on some technology and we guarantee it. And it's like it actually just doesn't work that way. So I'm curious how you navigated and found one where you were like, I think like this is a good fit for me. So I don't know if you had like a, I don't know, like a research kind of process you had to do.
For sure. Oh, for sure. So I researched heavily. I mean, so for the whole year that I was self studying, the reason I hadn't made the leap yet is because I couldn't afford it. Like things weren't, it just wasn't adding up for me to be able to do a full time boot camp at the moment. And I felt like part time wasn't going to be much better than what I was doing, anyways. But I didn't listen to what the boot camps were saying. So I didn't look at none of their pages. I didn't do none of that. I got on LinkedIn and I found people that had been through boot camps and I reached out to them personally. I probably talked to, I want to say close to 100 different people at different
Wow.
boot camps before I even went. And I tried to pick people in my area because I thought maybe locally. So like Tech Elevator in the area that I'm in, they are, businesses respect them at the moment. A lot of people have gotten hired. Obviously it's, the times are tough and I knew it was going to be difficult. I think I underestimated how difficult, but I knew that it was a battle coming. But it was researching through the people that went through it, right? And
Okay.
not just cherry picking people that had good experiences, but talking to everybody, the people that 2 years out of boot camp still haven't got a job. You know what I mean? Like I had to talk to everybody to get all the perspectives for that. And it just literally cold calling people just like I do now for a job, but I did it looking into the boot camps that I wanted to go to.
Right. Okay. And then so you ended up finding one based on basically a lot of that feedback, like almost like testimonials and finding something that you'd be aligned with. So I think that's awesome. I personally don't know. I haven't thought about it for myself. If I had to go through that, I feel like it would be extremely challenging just based on everything I see because there are so many. They all look like they're trying to sell you on the perfect dream opportunity. And at least for me, having like gone through, like I've been programming for 21 years, so I fall into like the traditional, like I was a kid and a computer nerd, so like I just kind of kept doing that. Um,
Yeah.
so for me to go, if I had to do this later and take a different path, I can't imagine how I would try to sift through a lot of the stuff I see. So awesome that you're able to do that. And you mentioned you're kind of like on the fence about how the experience went, but I'm curious, like what parts? Is it mostly just that, hey, I don't have the job in hand now, or were there other things like pros and cons that you'd want to share about the boot camp process?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a really good process. I learned a lot. I love the
Cool.
team. I do feel so they have career services, and this one is a lot more detailed than others. So I don't want to down talk them at all because what
Sure.
they're providing, like I literally have, sir, I could meet with people every day of the week for like the next 4 months. Like they're still doing classes and everything after I graduated. So they offer
Wow.
a lot that I can take advantage of. I guess the career services, I expected something a little bit more because as someone that's a career switcher and had a pretty successful career in healthcare, I needed more than just general advice, right? Like general things. Like I need a little more detailed for my specific situation, and I get it to a degree and this is another thing is, to be honest, like, do I feel this way because I don't have a job yet? Or is this how I really feel? So even as I tell you this, like, I think like, do I even really feel that way? Or do I like love what they did? And I think it's good. I'm just bitter at the moment,
Sure. I
and
think
I'm
that
trying to be
bias,
honest, like,
acknowledging the bias is like a huge thing when we reflect on stuff. That's a that's a superpower in and of
right,
itself, right? Being able to step back and go like, hold on, like where is this coming from? But and I think that's a fair thing. So it's good to hear. Like that sounds like a really good support system that they offer for you, even once you're graduated, and you felt like you were learning. But something I wanted to ask more about is like you had experience developing already. So going through the boot camp, what did when you're saying that you were learning, like what was the difference in learning versus you just kind of doing it on your own? Was it just more like structure? Was it new things or a combination? Just kind of curious about like how they helped level up for you.
right. Great question. So the structure was a huge one for me. Um, Another big one was honestly, I was able to take out extra parts of loans, and then I invest in the stock market. So I took the extra money, invested it, and now I've stretched the money even further. So that was another big selling point. But also, so even as I do like contract web development with local businesses, it's mostly all front end. And when
Okay.
I was self teaching, it was really hard for me to learn any back end, but it was really easy for me to pick up the front end because I could watch everything change as I do it.
Right.
So the back end was a big thing. So we learned Java in there and just like SQL and MVCs and all these different things. It was nice to be able to touch that stuff because I hadn't really touched it before. Like I felt very good with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I've done a little bit of React, so I have an idea of like what frameworks do and stuff like that. But working with Java and like controllers and learning about OOP, that stuff was major in the boot camp because I wasn't getting that on my own. Like it wasn't clicking, and maybe it took me self-studying for that long and then going there, and maybe that's why I felt like it clicked then, because I already like had at least seen it before and touched it
Right.
before. But that was like the last piece that was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, that's polymorphism. I get it. Okay, right.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. I can imagine like in your own okay, a couple things that are coming to mind for me. Being self-taught and if you're looking for jobs and stuff like contract work, probably a side effect of those two things together is that um, when you're picking up contract work, you're probably trying to take on things that you know you can deliver for, right? So if someone was like, I need something
Mm.
built, you're not going to go, I don't know how to do that, but I can do like 25% of it. Like, I'll take it because you'd probably feel like, oh crap, I can't deliver on this. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it might put you in a position where you don't kind of stretch too far out of your comfort zone to learn maybe more back end stuff, different tech stacks, because you're just saying, I can use these things I know, get better at them, and deliver the software. Is that fair or different stance on that?
Okay, so for the most part, that is fair and that is the truth. But I deal with a lot of mom and pop stores that wouldn't necessarily have an online presence at all. So when they
Okay.
start, like, I'm getting ready to get a blog website set up for somebody, and like, I've done it before a little bit, but like I am willing to do a little bit more than what's in my comfort zone. But you are right. Like if it was a different kind of contract, maybe, but since I'm going out and generating these leads myself, like I'm cold calling people, I'm sending messages, it's a little bit different. And I'm willing to, go past my comfort zone a little bit, right? Unless it's like a really big project. So I did get offered a pretty substantial project coming up. I don't know if I'm going to take it just because it is a lot out of my realm, and it's a really I think I could do it, but they're relying on it so much. I don't want to put a bad
Mhm.
name on myself out here too. Like, we let Will try, but he didn't make it happen, or it was
Right.
janky, or he did spaghetti code through the whole thing, like something like that.
Right. Well, that's no, I think that's a very respectable thing, right? To be able to have the, you want to stretch outside of your comfort zone, but at the same time, if you're like, I don't know. I feel like my perspective is if someone's paying you money, if you're like, I don't feel good about this,
Hmm.
maybe it's not a great opportunity. Maybe it's something for the future, right? Where you can say, hey, like if there's still more opportunities, you have that connection made. If they need more things built, you have more experience. You can kind of lean back into that. But I think, if there's other
Right.
opportunities that you can take along the way, that's excellent. Which leads me to another interesting question, because you have a unique experience here. I think a lot of people are not only trying, they might be going through boot camps or might be trying to figure out how to get started, but you've done a bunch of this stuff and you've gotten contract work. Like, I have never
Yeah.
even gotten contract work in my entire life. And something that you said that was making me go, like, my skin's crawling, is cold calling. But this is really interesting because it's a skill that stereotypically software engineers and developers, you won't see me on a phone. If my phone rings right now, I would be going, why is that happening? So never mind me having to reach out to someone on a phone or send an email to someone and being like, I'm basically cold calling, right? How, like, is this just like part of your personality where you're comfortable with that, or did you have to overcome that type of thing?
Really good question.
Because I need to know for me.
So, right. So I have to say, like, I'm kind of like that too, right? If my phone rings, I don't always want to talk on the phone. I'm not real big on that, but I also believe like desperation breeds innovation, right? And I was feeling desperate. I'm really good talking to people when I get comfortable. Like it's kind of been my career is like literally building rapport with people. And I do public speaking in the volunteer basis. So like I'm comfortable with it to a degree, but this is a little bit different when you're cold calling and you need to be prepared for lots of no's, lots of not responding, lots of people saying, yes, this is awesome, and then string you along for weeks and then never do anything. But I will say the first couple of times I did it, I paced in my room for a little bit and I was like, do this. You can do it. And I had to hype myself up to do it, to send it. And then I did it and I was like, nothing happened. Okay. I'm still okay. Right.
Right.
So I did it again. But I do specifically remember doing those first couple ones. My palms were sweating. My heart was racing. I was scared. Right. But I just had to push through that fear because I was like, I'm not getting a job right now. I have kids that I have to take care of. I have to do something. I can't sit here and wait for a company to give me a shot. And I don't want to go back to healthcare. So if I can stretch this a little bit longer during my job search, I'm going to do it. And that kind of breeded that innovation of like, just do it. Desperation was like, make it happen. And here we are. It's nothing huge. It's not like paying all my bills, but like I'm going a little bit. It's stringing me along a little bit longer. You know what I mean? I have a little bit more time on my plate now. So, and
Yeah.
I'm not building a whole lot of technical experience, like because, like you said, like I'm not doing a lot of stuff out of my comfort zone because I want to give them a good product, but I'm learning about how to make a client's vision be reality. And I feel like that's a key for me is because I'm really learning how to like pick through their mind of what they really want and put it on there. So when you're done, it feels so good when you do a website and they sit down and are like, oh my God, I really like this. And like that is a really good feeling. You're like, yeah, okay, I did it. I did it.
That's awesome. So, a couple things you said there that I absolutely love. So, I definitely appreciate the openness and honesty about pacing before getting on the phone. Right? Like, I when
Oh,
people talk
not
to me
just
about,
pacing. I was yelling at myself saying, you could do this, man. You got this. Go. Like you've been
yeah,
through so much worse in your life. Like you can do this. Go.
yeah, it's just a phone call, right? I joke around, and I mean this is true though. For me, public speaking, like I do obviously do a bunch of YouTube and stuff now, but that's helped me a lot before doing the YouTube videos. And I had to change the way. It's probably over the last 16 months or so. I had to start changing the way I would refer to how I feel about speaking in public, because I would say I am bad at it. I don't like speaking in public. I'm bad at it. But it's like, it's not a fair statement. I don't like speaking in public. I'm bad at it is wrong to say, because I'm only not great at speaking in public because I never do it. If I keep telling
But
myself,
you said it right there. Let me interrupt for 1 second. You said it right there. And our words hold power. And what we tell ourselves every day is what we will become or believe or whatever. And like you said right there, I don't mean to interrupt. I just like that is so important to me. I believe what you say about yourself is what you'll become. Like you literally have the power to say that. Like I was working with somebody recently, just kind of like coaching and encouragement a little bit, and kept saying I'm not a software developer. And I was like, quit saying that and say that you are, because if you say it enough, you're going to believe it, and then other people are going to believe it. And I'll leave it at that and cut you off.
No,
But
no,
that is so important to me.
I think that's huge, and it probably took hearing it from like that kind of mindset from my wife, actually, because I had I had a problem with saying things or acknowledging things like, words are power, because I would take it like literally. So it would be like, if you say something, it will happen. I'm like, sorry, it's not magic. Things don't work that way. But what I started to realize is like, that's not what people are saying. They're not saying literally you like summon and manifest things automatically by saying it, because that's obviously not true. But what they're saying is that when you repeat the things, when you shift your mindset, that is where the change happens. And it took me, like I said, with the public speaking thing, I had to stop telling myself, you're bad at it. So I won't go around bragging and being like, oh, I'm so good at it. But at least I say, like, hey, look, to speak in public, yeah, I get uncomfortable with it. But I've had enough people say, like, hey, you did a great job. I put out enough YouTube videos now where I'm like, I can turn on a camera and talk to it. I don't feel that I'm bad at it anymore. So I don't have to say I'm a pro, but I don't feel I'm bad at it. Do I get a little uncomfortable and a little nervous? Sure. But it was a mindset shift. So the joke, or kind of a joke that I wanted to say, is when you were talking about the pacing and the hyping yourself up, what I used to tell people was that my fear of talking in public is literally, it feels, and this is the same thing for cold calling. Exact same thing for cold calling. To me, it feels like I have to go ask the prettiest girl in high school to prom, and you're holding your phone and you're like, or you have to go walk up to her and you're like, I can't, how could I ever do this? I can't do it. I can't, right? You keep telling yourself no. And I
Mm.
love that you said, I did it, and nothing, like, I'm still here, right? I could not get over that kind of thing growing up. And I wish I could go back. I mean, not to change the girl dating thing, but just that mindset of being like, literally stop sabotaging yourself, because it's not helping. It's just ridiculous how big of an impact that has.
Right. But I think those things are important, because I don't think we get there without having those experiences when we're younger. So, and this leads back to, like, I went to prison, I was addicted to drug, all these different things. And like, people say like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because I had to go through these things to make me the man I am today. And I feel like I learned so much and I got over so many things from going through the negative things. So just like you talking about as a child, going through these things, I think they're so important. It's part of the process. Like, you can't just arrive to the destination. You have to drive there first. And that's part of driving there. And I like that a lot, how you just said that, because that's just part of the process. And it's uncomfortable and it's not fun, but it can pay off in the end when you get through it. And you're like, hey, I have a better understanding of this. And it's probably going to stick this time because I went through all the stuff before.
Yeah, and exactly along that train of thought is, especially for more junior software developers or people trying to get into the industry, something I hear a lot is like, and I understand this because I think it's only human. People are looking for shortcuts. They'll say, "Hey, you're doing it. Like, tell me what you did so I can just do it." And or like, what's the best book to read? What's the best language to learn? Like, where's the best courses? And it's like, there just isn't. And I have to keep repeating this to people, like, the only shortcut is accepting that there isn't one. And the sooner that you can do that and just start putting in the time to get better, you will put in the time and you will get better. And that's just kind of how it is. So
For
that's been
sure.
my
For sure.
philosophy.
Yeah.
But you had another experience that you brought up that I wanted to call out as being so important for software engineers. And I would say a majority of software engineers never get this experience in their entire career. And that is, you talked about being able to, speak with a customer and deliver to a customer what they're looking for. So getting in their head, trying to figure out what they want. I would say that most software engineers never get to experience this ever. So I think that's really cool that you've had this opportunity. But have you kind of acknowledged that for yourself, where you're like, this is actually a side to software engineering, or is it kind of just like it's just happening because it has to take place?
Yeah, I don't think I have, man. Sometimes, if I'm being honest, I'm really hard on myself sometimes. And I'm like, and that's another thing. Like when you're a junior, like, or you're trying to break in, like, I go through days where I don't feel motivated and I feel like I'm wasting my time. And like, I don't like, as we're having this conversation and you're saying these things and it's clicking on my head, but I'm like, I never thought about that. Right. And then I talked to somebody the other day and they were like, have you thought about being a PM or something? Like you have a lot of leadership and like you understand the technical. And I'm like, I never really thought about it. And they were like, you could probably do that right now. And I'm like, well, we'll see. We'll see. But as you're going through it, it's hard to see the picture when you're in the picture, right? And it takes these kind of conversations, and that's why this is another reason why networking is so important because people hold a mirror to yourself, right? Because we can't always see what we're doing, what we're accomplishing, and it takes those people to hold that mirror up, like, look at you, man, like you are
Yeah.
doing these things, you are learning things that are really valuable that we just don't see.
Yep, it's huge, right? It's I actually did I don't know if it was last week or the week before. I was doing a live stream on, I think it was last month. I did a live stream basically on this idea of, we're not kind to ourselves. And even from you sharing your experiences, being able to volunteer and help, like obviously there's a tremendous amount of kindness built into you, right? It's part of who you are. Like you said, you're instilling it in your children. And it's so hard for us to be kind to ourselves and to be able to kind of sit there and go, oh, I'm not gonna curse on YouTube, but like to be able to say, holy crap, like I am doing it, right? It might not be as you're not snapping your fingers and you're making $1 million a year writing code without even looking at the screen kind of thing, but like but you're doing it, you're taking the steps to get to where you want to be. And I think it's important that we do have these opportunities to reflect and go, yeah, like if I were a year back seeing where I am now, I'd probably be like, yeah, man, that's pretty sweet, right? But we don't do it enough.
No, no, and it is important, and it's so crazy because I push those kind of things onto people. Like, be nice to yourself. You got to love yourself. Like you have to make yourself important. Like to yourself. Like you got to love on yourself and do these things, and then I'll turn around and not do these things. Right,
Yep.
right. But I have awareness, so I can reel myself back in usually. But this last week was really difficult for me. I was like, man, nothing's happening. What am I doing? I just wasted all this money. We're eating up our savings. Like the kids are looking, they'll be starving next week. What am I gonna do? You know what I mean? And then the next day I'll wake up and I'll be like, you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing. It doesn't matter because that's what discipline is that our feelings can't always dictate our behaviors. Like we have to just do the things. And that's what's so important when you're trying to break in, even moving up through the corporate ladder, like all these different things, that discipline of like, it doesn't matter how I feel today. I'm getting up, I'm applying, I'm cold calling, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm going to shoot this video, I'm going to do all these different things that I have to do in order to move forward, whether I feel like it or not.
Right. Yeah, not every day are we going to have that. Like, we're not going to wake up every day feeling super motivated. And in fact, spoiler alert, we probably won't wake up feeling motivated most days. So, kind of have to accept. And I love that you were kind of, calling out some different examples there. Like, just got to do these things, right? And the more that you can kind of persevere through that, I think the better, because you just end up building up this resiliency that carries over into a lot of other things. So, um, I think that's super important. The idea though about sort of that customer experience, like maybe experience is wrong. The experience working with customers directly. That's a better way to put it. I would say there's actually a big downfall to people that have gone through formal education and have never had experience to work with customers. I feel lucky that when I went through university, I had internships, and at least at least a few of them allowed me to work pretty close with customers. Like one, I was working for a contractor, and the second internship I had there, we were at the contractor's like uh, not a lab, I don't know, you would call it like a facility, I guess, and we were writing code for their hardware there, and so we were like at the customer's location writing code. And so I feel lucky that I went through school at least and got to have these interactions with customers. Not like I was leading the conversations, but I got to see them happening. And I think something that I've observed happen Again, it's a generalization. I don't really like doing generalizations because there's always exceptions. But what I've noticed
Right.
is a lot of people that take a very strong stance on the academic side is they go into industry and then it's like, okay, we have to go deliver these features. And they need to, a lot of the time, wait until they feel like something's perfect. But what they don't realize is that basically 100% of the time, you are never going to have anything that's perfect. You're going to be working in legacy code bases. All of those design patterns and things that people said either use them or don't in these situations. Guess what? You're seeing all of the exact opposite in the code bases you're working in. You have time constraints, unlike just trying to look at some theoretical stuff. And I think that when people aren't grounded in the idea, like we need to get value shipped to customers because that's the only reason that we're in business, they end up missing the big picture and it's just code. Like, what is perfect code? And they lose all of that time. So I did want to say again, like, I think that you having that exposure, especially at this part in your career, is enormous.
Thank you. Yeah, and it took somebody saying that to me. What you had just said, it got me thinking about somebody I was talking to recently, and they were like, "That's all that matters. If somebody's willing to pay you for what you're doing from like the customer, even in any big tech or anything, like it all comes down to the user, right? What do they want? What do they appreciate? And that's the most important thing to think about when you're doing that. I guess from a business standpoint, should I say?
Yeah, it's I wanted to give you an example because maybe in your current development, especially if it's mostly, if you're doing stuff on your own right now, something that happens is that people will talk about tech debt. I always love ranting about tech debt on these chats when it comes up. But a lot of the time, they take this perspective again, engineering mindset. I totally get it. Um, hey, we have this code; it's crappy. We need to spend the time refactoring it. This code it's like spaghetti code. It's bad. And what ends up happening is that as programmers, we want to talk to other people that are in different stakeholder positions. Maybe it is a PM, but someone who acts as essentially a product owner and works on prioritization. And the programmer will say, again, I'm generalizing here, hey, we have tech debt in this area. We need to spend time on this. And the product owner will say, well, like, why? And the programmer can't articulate why. Oh, it's bad. Oh, it's ugly code. Oh, it's not tested. And the product owner is going, so, like, we have these features to deliver. And then you have this weird dichotomy where the product owners are like, why are the programmers always so concerned about their precious code? And the programmers are like, why don't the product owners ever listen to us? And the missing link is that you're not talking to the stakeholders or basically your audience in a way that they're going to care about. So if truly
Mhm.
customers care about receiving the value, right? They want the value that you're giving them, you're solving their problems. They don't care what your code looks like. They don't care what programming language, tech stack, how many tests you have. They don't care about any of it. People hate hearing that, but it's true. What they do care
Yeah,
about
you're
is
right.
that they're getting the value and that they get it at a rate that they're happy with. So if you are a programmer going, oh, why can't we get our tech debt addressed? Like we have to go do that. Start talking to your product owner about how addressing the tech debt is going to allow you to ship value faster. Like it's just a communication gap. And I think you're going to be so well positioned to have that other perspective to go, like if we need to go work on tech debt, how is that going to translate?
Right. And then explain it to them in a way that they can understand. They don't want to hear all the technical jargon. They don't care about the SEO I'm putting on there. They don't so what I just break it down like, hey, I'm going to help you show up in Google search more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's all they want to hear. They don't care about all the extra stuff. Just something simple and let them know why you're doing it, how it brings value to them, and here's your product, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And that brings me to another point, and I wanted to kind of mention this about your other experiences. And so, I think for a lot of people that I've talked to, at least, who have done a career switch, and maybe it's a little bit later in life compared to other people they're seeing, they're going, "Oh, I'm gonna be behind." Right? I didn't I wasn't birthed like with a keyboard in my hand programming, so I'm going to be so far behind the average programmer, right? It's obviously a little exaggeration, but they just feel like they're far behind because they didn't have, this setup that they're seeing, what they imagine the stereotypical software engineer has. But um, there are so many other experiences outside of software engineering directly that you can bring in and sort of use as a superpower as someone who develops software. Um, and you mentioned, leadership traits. You mentioned, this innate kindness to try and help other people. Like that's a huge value add on a team. Communication. So, have you kind of thought through that, and have you noticed for yourself some of these skills that might be helping you already?
Yeah, I want to say yeah, but like we were talking about the value, I haven't got the value that I'm looking for, and
Mm,
I'm on a mission right now that I haven't accomplished. So I don't reflect on it a whole lot because I'm
right.
still in the process. But I assume once I achieve my goal and I get a full time job and I'm not stressing over bills or whatever, that I'll sit back and I usually do a reflection of what's going on, and I'll see, and I know the value I bring because I've done a lot with a lot of people, and like I know what I can bring to a team, and a lot of it is soft skills. But I know that they're strong soft skills, right? Team building, like making the workplace funner to be in, or like these little things are so important because anybody listening, you as well, like you work somewhere that it's not fun to work with them or you don't get along with them, it makes the whole job miserable. The
Yep.
team doesn't produce as much product or the goals or achieving the mission that we're after because everybody's miserable, everybody's in a bad mood, they're just not happy, and it just brings everybody down. And I think it's so important to have those skills to build everybody up, because I know when I'm in a good mood and I like my team and I'm working with them, I'm working harder too. And I'm probably working faster and I'm probably doing better work than what I normally do just because the energy's better. The energy, everything about it's better, you know?
It's a real thing, and like the exact opposite holds true. So a lot of the time you'll hear people talking about, as software developers, the 10x engineer and stuff. Like I don't know where the 10x comes from,
The
but
graph, that
yeah,
graph.
there you go, right through to the moon somewhere. But basically, you have this idea of being able to multiply other people, and I think that that's a huge benefit. That's what you want in teams. But unfortunately, the exact opposite holds true as well. And if you have like one bad apple, um, the entire team can grind to a halt in terms of productivity. So as an engineering manager, that's one of those things where, yeah, I want to be encouraging everyone to try and be a multiplier with the rest of the team, like help out when you can. The more that we're working together, the better we can do as a team. But it only takes one person, even with a bunch of multipliers, to basically wreck the whole thing and make people go, why am I here? I hate being here. And then nothing gets done and no one's happy. So yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, it's a real thing. It makes a huge difference on teams.
It's real in all industry. It don't matter what industry you're in, that holds true everywhere, right? And then you think like, what if you don't have a multiplier on the team and all you have is a bunch of, just I show up to work and then you got a couple bad apples. Then what happens? Next thing
Yeah.
you know, you got a full turnover on the whole team. You know,
Yep. It's
as,
absolutely
as
awful.
someone that's directed and right, as because I've supervised a lot of teams. I was in the leadership roles in substance abuse and behavioral health and all these things for a long time. So like I've seen the effects firsthand of like people that are like, you see them whispering at the water cooler and then you see scowls and then they didn't say hi in the morning and it just gets worse and worse. And my goal has always been to like, as soon as like I feed off energy, like I can feel people's energy. I'm real good. I'm in tune with that kind of stuff. And like immediately I'm like, let's sit down and have a talk right now and let's address this, because if it's not addressed immediately, it will become a lot worse.
Yep.
And you don't have to be mean because usually it's just them going through something bad. Like a lot of times, like you find out that I think of a worker I had before that she was getting ready to lose her house and like her kid was sick and she was being real snippy and not nice at work, but I knew there was something deeper. And it took that sitting down and talking to them and finding out what's really going on to address those issues. Like, okay, so there's something deeper going on. It's not the work at all, but you're taking it out on the work and the team, but it has nothing to do with that. So let's address that. Let's figure out how we can find a solution to your issue.
Yeah, it's this idea of like assuming best intentions with people, right? So it's like people aren't, I don't like to believe that everyone's just malicious, right? Like, so if something is, if you're observing something that doesn't feel great, right? Someone's behavior, maybe it's changed, maybe it just whatever, you're observing it and you're like, this doesn't feel great. It's probably not, oh, this person is a terrible person. There's probably something else going on. So that's, we see this all the time, even not in leadership positions. You might notice that even just people's communication styles and stuff on code reviews, things like that, emails, messages, like written communication. One of the worst things in software engineering, even though it's like the most common thing we do. But you'll find that people communicate a certain way, and you're like, like I don't know if that's a good vibe that I'm getting from this person. And really, like, if you just assume best intentions, you can go talk with them and be like, oh, like, you're not totally a bully, you're actually a nice person, you're not mad when you're reviewing my code, it's just how you wrote the message. Like, but if we don't address these things, it's so easy for them to just spill over and erode an entire team in terms of like how effective, how engaged, just everything falls apart. So soft skills are critical.
Seriously. And that's why I feel like it's so important for me to be open about things that I'm going through, how I feel. Like even my story, like people are very against me. They're like, "Hey, you haven't gotten a job in tech yet." I wouldn't be sharing that. And I'm like, that's my story, right? And I've been through that thing, and that inspires other people because when we're open with people, it allows them to be open because they're like, "Oh, you're showing me your underbelly where you're vulnerable. Now I can do the same with you." And you build that rapport and that bond, and it like you just don't know, then that kindness spreads to the next person, and you change like that. And I feel like that's so important. But even to translate that in the software development and team building, like it's important to have that. Like we're all human, and I think sometimes some of us forget that, or we're scared to talk about it because we think that we have to be a certain way all the time, and it's just not the truth. We don't grow from that, we don't learn from that, we just stay kind of content. At least that's my
Yeah.
experience anyway.
Yep, 100%. We see it all the time, even with engineers that become more and more senior. They eventually, not all of them, obviously, but sometimes people forget, like, I used to not be the highest level engineer. I didn't used to know all of this stuff. And they kind of get set in their ways. You can kind of stagnate. It's a shame for sure. But the more that I think the phrase is like a growth mindset, right? Keeping a growth mindset, being open, being able to show vulnerability just goes a long way. When I joined a team at Microsoft earlier this year, I switched teams, and I said when I joined the team, like, I don't know like anything about this team. I don't know any of the technology we have. I have new hires, and I need to be transparent with them. Like, look, I don't know this stuff yet, but I'm going to learn it. You're going to learn it. We're going to learn it together, because I don't want to masquerade as like, oh, like I know that. And then they can't trust me because they're like, why is this guy lying to us? Like, it just looks ridiculous. So I think it's
Right.
it's critical.
Not only that, but like the people come and be like after you, like if you display that, and then I'm sitting here trying to learn, I'm like, well, why am I not figuring this out like that? Why do I not understand? You know what I mean? And then it's discouraging. I went through that personally where I seen people and I'm like, I'm not picking it up that quick. I don't understand. You know what I mean? And it was like you start
I
finding
might
people
not be
that are
either.
honest, like you're talking about. Right, 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 right.
Yeah, no, that's huge, right? I think, yeah, the vulnerability thing, it's a big part, and I think a lot of us, or maybe not a lot of us, but there's definitely some people who don't lean into it. And yeah, I think the right way to go is open honesty, and goes a long way, especially in team building. So that's definitely a good trait and good thing to keep in mind. But Will, I wanted to say thank you so much. I know it's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day. Obviously, this will be going out
Thank you.
not on
Thank you.
Father's Day, but thank you for making some time with me on Father's Day to have this chat. You do have a YouTube channel. You are active on LinkedIn. I will get links and stuff from you after, but you want to tell viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, so at the Tech Dad 87 is my YouTube channel. I just kind of share my experiences and try to motivate others and just kind of build a community of people that went through a lot of what I went through early on. And I feel, like this is my way to give back to the tech community. I've done it in healthcare, and it just means a lot to me to do the same in the tech community to spread this, like we're talking about kindness and and being open, and like the things like pacing, and I'm scared to do this. Like I want to tell people like, I'm a big guy, I've been to prison, all these things, but like I get scared. Like I go through these things. Like, it's very normal for people to go through this stuff. Like we don't have to put on a facade today. Like we can share who we really are.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And then LinkedIn, what's your LinkedIn? You're active there, of course.
Uh,
So
I am just William Ray. You'll see me with my blue collar shirt and a big smile.
awesome. And like I said, I'll get the link and stuff, so I have that in the description and the comments, and people can check you out. So, Will, thanks again. Awesome story. I love what you're doing in terms of being able to give back. I love the messaging, and yeah, the job search will not take much longer. I'm sure of it, and it's great that you are being very proactive. You are basically creating work for yourself, which is amazing. I have never been able to do that for myself, so kudos to you. It's a really powerful thing.
Thank you. Thank you.